provide additional information. These molecular expression arrays are really, really nice, but also antibody tests used in more traditional pathology settings would be even more conclusive that you have a particular mutation or a particular change. And then also screening for mutations in oncogenes using high throughput sequencing. Maybe you could make it a much broader net, and then cull out those hundreds of things, and then pop them into an algorithm that puts them into your little circuit diagram and spits out with 3 or 4 targets that would be good of the ones you have, or something like that. It would have to be something that involves big computers at this point to really make it inexpensive. But nonetheless, it is well on its way to being a new component to molecular diagnostics. Diagnostics, I should say. And then the idea of development of many molecular targeted drugs to administer as a cocktail based on molecular type of tumor. As I mentioned, there's 38 now that are on the market, and more every year. So, and some of them have the same target, and some of them are brand new targets. And the good news is, based on the few that have been developed so far, and have really been used for a number of years, there is hope for treatment that can at least arrest tumor growth, keep it at bay. Not necessarily eliminate the tumor, but stop it from growing what's called stable disease. And also have small enough side effects to allow long-term use of the drug. It's like, yeah, I'm sorry, you have to take this drug for the rest of your life, but your tumor's going to stay small. So that's still the future. But right now, right this very minute, if you were to go in, your new treatment for a stage 4, a late stage cancer, which is where most of them are detected and treated, can extend life by several years. And I think most importantly, as I have seen on a personal level with friends and family, significantly improve the quality of life. That's the big one, is that a lot of the chemotherapy and also cancer itself is, it's traditionally, a wasting disease where you slowly, get sicker and sicker and sicker, and, for a couple of years you're half alive. Whereas with these new drugs, especially the angiogenesis inhibitors, you can stop growth of the tumor, and the person can sort of bounce back to 100% for a couple of years, get their life in order, figure it out, and then, the tumor bypasses the need for, drug resistance. There's all kinds of mechanisms, and the tumor will win in the end, generally speaking, and but then the person dies rather rapidly from a fairly good state. And so that sounds really morbid to you guys, because you guys have like many, many years ahead of you, but that is really this is a positive spin on where cancer, what I've seen change over the last 30 years in cancer treatment. So I believe that in your lifetime, maybe not in my life, but in your lifetime, cancer could be changed from a killer to an annoying disease, manageable disease. Maybe, hopefully. We have some obstacles. Of course we do. We're still a ways from being able to systematically obtain a molecular fingerprint of tumors. We don't really understand it fully. And the technology to be able to systematically determine it is still a work in progress. The designer drugs that I've been talking about are very expensive. The process needs to be streamlined. Like I was talking about my friend who bounced right back to 100% and was able to travel around the world with his kids and do everything he wanted to do, but his drug cost his insurance company $20,000 a month. So that gives you a feeling for how expensive it is. And part of that, much of it, I can tell you from working on the other side of the pharmaceutical door, is it really does take millions and millions of dollars and lots of people to make these things come to fruition. But also, these are for-profit companies, and of course they need to make profit. So it's part of the American system as well. FDA approval is a steep hurdle for any kind of testing in human patients. You're not allowed to test. Even somebody who's got a 4% chance of surviving their next round of chemo, you cannot offer them your drug instead legally. You cannot, not without a lot of rigmarole. So that's a problem. You have to go back and test it in mice again, or what have you. And that isn't very predictive. So it's very difficult to get over this hurdle. And then like this young woman talked about, like any viable adaptive biological system, tumors develop a resistant population, requiring the need for a new drug again. Yes, sir.
Is there people that are just, like you said, they have such a low chance of survival that just go to these companies and do it like, you know, I mean, you obviously can't put it in a paper or you can't write about it in your study if they didn't do it legally, but are there people that do it just
Under
so...
the table?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably, for their friends, or some, just like there are people that, help people commit suicide because they wanna die because they're in so much pain or what have you, but it's not legal. You can't legally do it. You cannot, you can legally, let's see, that's not totally true. It's that you can do, what is it called? Compassionate, like in some cases, I remember, you have, like, let's say a drug is in, like, this is true for Sutent, it's in phase 1, and it was only like 20 patients, but wow, like 2 of the patients out of the 20 just miraculously recovered from really nasty cancer, and it was like, oh my God, this is a powerhouse. This drug is going to cure cancer, right? I mean, and of course, with 2 patients, that is completely statistically insignificant and turned out not to be the case. It was an effective drug, but on a much lower level. However, I remember there was a big to-do about somebody who petitioned for, I can't remember what the term, it's a buzzword, compassionate something, where you can legally release the drug to an individual who would like to take it and then follow them. But it's a big, you've got to go through all the lawyers and everything's got to be set up before that can be done. You can't just, pass it out the back door to your uncle and see what happens, But I remember having long discussions about that, because the drug that I was directly involved in working on was for lung cancer, and I had done a lot of reading of the statistics and stuff, and it was just, like I said, horrifying to me. These patients that were being enrolled in the clinical trials, they literally had a 4% chance of survival with the standard of care, and they were going to be given the standard of care plus our drug, so they were probably going to die anyway. And so it's like, can't you offer them to try it, on its own? I mean, and then it's like, again, you get into this whole legal argument about, are they really of sound mind? What about, and you could be exploiting people and using them like guinea pigs, so it's just this, it's a very, very difficult issue, bioethical issue to deal with. Hopefully it'll, with this slow process, we'll still be able to make something. Again, I come back around to saying, to me, where to put the money is early detection. Early detection, you can eradicate it with a laser, and boom, it's gone, right? I mean, that's the way to do it. But that's a technical challenge. I mean, okay. So that's all I have. That was my last slide, other than just additional slides. So we can open it up for discussion. I guess it's kind of time to go. Look at that. Just about. So if you guys have any more questions, I mean, even if they're just off the wall, not related to the talk, I don't mind.
Do you see any way to get around the money issue? I mean, it seems like it's really,
Well,
I mean, I guess it's a fact of
so, yeah, I mean, well, some people, I have a
hard.
hard time being sure that I can see it. I'm kind of an old-fashioned biologist, in terms of, I feel like the only real experiments are going to be, you do the real experiment with the real McCoy in the lab. But, with the advent of all this computer science interfacing with biotechnology, you have these bioinformatics, these huge databases, and these huge people like maybe familiar with the Institute for Systems Biology is a huge, one of the local places where they're spending huge amounts of money to do things like, you can figure out, you have a computer measure, every protein that touches every protein over a 5-second period of time, and then maps it and puts it into an algorithm, rather than like trying to actually understand it with our little pea brains, to have a computer that actually can do this whole combinatorial thing and, like I said, spit out something. That could be cheap if it worked, where you could save somebody, like I just said, I love the thing from Star Trek, and you go, shh, and say, oh yeah, it's multiple myeloma, it's mutations in X, Y, and Z, let's give them this, A computer-aided system where you can do everything in cyberspace could make it cheaper. That article that you gave your class, Brenda, talks about that, about like especially in drug development, where you have to do this iterative process. Well, maybe if you could selectively target, you could, so back up for a second. A lot of companies, what they're doing, it's really important, is to take, when you find out whether a drug works or doesn't work, collect all that data and be able to push it back to the beginning of the pipeline and use that information to help decide, oh, no, drugs with this side group definitely were bad in humans. Throw all those out. Those kinds of things. Or you could have a computer aid do that to be able to take patient blood data, for example, from a clinical trial and apply it to the next generation of drugs and help pre-select ones, so you basically have a better chance of success. Because by the time you get to the clinic, every drug is going to cost maybe on average like $200 million. Okay, but how about if that $200 million is spent and 50% of them make it, not 5%? Then we're going to suddenly the cost is going to significantly drop. So that would be one way. But the other thing, like I said, is if we could just detect early, then we may not even really need the drugs as much. I mean, that sort of almost would preclude the need for, well, maybe not entirely preclude it.
Are pharmaceutical companies as interested in early detection as they are in these chronic drugs that?
That's an interesting question. I don't really know if I could, my guess would be no, because obviously you can make a lot of money if you're charging a patient $20,000 a month. However, things like these, screening tests, if you are the company that comes up with a screening test for ovarian cancer and every HMO in the entire country, or maybe even the entire world, is now going to use it on everybody once a year, you're going to make a fortune. So yeah, I mean, if there's a market for it, and I think a lot of people are realizing how especially a lot of, actually I think, I don't know what how you guys feel about HMOs, and everyone has different opinions, but I think they're really pushing people to do preventative care because it saves them money, the whole organization. And that's good. That's good for people too, because your doctor's sitting here telling you, you gotta get out and exercise, you're still smoking, don't smoke, you gotta take your vitamin D or whatever. Also, get in for your mammogram, get in for your thing, get in for your screening, and this would be one step closer. It's like, okay, let's treat all of our patients in group health with this one of these blood scanners, and then we know which 5 people out of 100 you really should give a lung X-ray because they had something, and then you could catch their cancer early, and it would cost $100,000 instead of $800,000 to treat that person. So yes, I think there is, maybe not so much the pharmaceutical companies, but there is if you want to look at it from a cold, calculating, capitalistic point of view, which is pretty much the way things work in this country, yes, it's definitely an advantage to detect early for insurance companies anyway. So, well, thank you for your attention.
Thank you.